Becoming a dentist in the US is a dream for many people, especially if you're coming from India, Australia, from there to California, and then now to New York. Stay tuned as we talk to a doctor who's getting her advanced standing status as a dentist in the US right now. Stay tuned. Hey, this is Dr. Darwin, the new dentist coach, with another episode of Ask Dr. Darwin on the New Dentist Podcast Show, where we talk about getting into dental school, surviving dental school, getting into residency, and then life as a new dentist. Guys, be sure that you are continuing to like, to share, and most importantly, to comment on the videos and the episodes that you're watching and listening to. Your feedback is important, and it helps us create new content that's tailored just for you. Also, this episode of Ask Dr. Darwin is being brought to you by GetIntoDentalResidency.com. GetIntoDentalResidency.com, the ultimate service to help you get into your postgraduate dental residency program this cycle, but also to help you get into an advanced standing program as well for international dentists. For more details, go down below and check it out. And we'll hope to see you in the network and get you into dental school or get into residency this cycle. And that's today's episode. We're going to be talking with a dentist who's, again, traveled from India to Australia to California, and then now on the East Coast in New York, where she is pursuing her U.S. dental degree. Today, we're joined with Dr. DrKaur, who is here and is going to tell you all the tips, all the strategies, what's going on with her right now as an advanced standing student at NYU. So, Doc, how you doing?
I'm good, Dr. Darwin, and I'm privileged to be here, honestly. And I'm honestly inspired by all the videos. I've been a big fan, and I feel definitely privileged to be here today.
Well, we're
my journey.
Well, listen, we're privileged to have you on the episode because today's topic is a dream for many people, many dentists that have trained in other parts of the world that are coming to the U.S. and want to practice dentistry here. So as we continue to learn about your journey, let's talk and find out a little bit more about you. Please introduce yourself for those that are meeting you for the first time.
So my name is DrKaur. I did my graduation from India, the northern part of India, state of Punjab, in 2013. And then I moved to Australia to pursue my master's in dental public health from University of Western Australia. I lived there and worked as a research associate for like a year or so before moving to US with my husband. I got married. That's why I moved to US, and we settled down in California. And over there, I welcomed my daughter. And after that, I started my journey for getting into the dental school and getting back to my career again, once again, all over, passed my boards and everything. So yeah, here I am at NYU now, all the way on the other side of the US after living my journey in California. So, and I'm loving it.
Good. Well, we love that you have made that decision to get back into dentistry. Especially here in the U.S., there's so many opportunities, so many different programs spread all throughout the country, and you're at one that has really changed over the years as far as the curriculum, but also the number of years of training. NYU has gone back and forth over the last probably 8 years, from 4 years to 2 years to 3 years to back to 4 years, and what have you. Talk a little bit about that, but let's find out what made you, you were a dentist in India. You got your master's in dental public health in Australia. You came to the US, got married, came to the US, and evidently something was either missing or something that you felt like you needed to fulfill. So share with us a little bit about why you made this decision to practice and become a dentist, a U.S. trained dentist.
Yeah, so definitely. After having my license in India and practicing and doing the public health also, I did have an option to practice just as a public health person with the government officials and everything. But there was definitely a void, to like see patients every day, to deal with them, to talk with them and build connections. Like every single day, you feel like, okay, you transform lives for certain people in some manner. Maybe it's very small or big, so that void was not filling up. It took me like 2 years to decide to get back into dentistry. I wanted to pursue PhD first for public health, right? But then I was like, even if I do PhD, I will be missing my clinic part. I can't just be a academic. I love being an academic person, but I want to be an academic along with a clinician. So I was like, okay, leave everything apart, get into dentistry, even if it was like getting back from square one, all the journey again, passing the boards. It was very hard for me to decide. But then once I decided, I was like, okay, now I know my goal. And I was like readily just going one step further every time. And I'm lucky enough that I got into the first cycle. I
Yeah,
did
that's
a lot of
big.
hard work.
That's big. That's big. I talk to colleagues, our international trained colleagues all the time, and they shared with me the fact that it's taken them many cycles,
Yes.
or and which means many years in for some individuals. But the fact to get in your first time, first cycle, is a lot to be said. So let's talk about that cycle and how you prepared your application, your CAAPID application. Walk us through how you got everything together, and also why you think how certain parts of that made you a successful candidate.
Okay, so this starts with like, honestly, I did not, as I told you, did not think about getting into dentistry right away when I moved to US. My plans were a bit different, but I started working as a dental assistant first. Then I got an opportunity to work as a medical assistant in an urgent care place. So I was like, okay, just try and see what happens, right? So got into an urgent care clinic. I became a medical assistant. I was doing the standard stuff. Then COVID happened, right? And before I could even think of, everything was closed down. But that was the point when I realized that, okay, this is the time when we really need the dentist, because the dental clinics were closed. And being at an urgent care, I could see patients every other morning, right? Coming with a big abscess, coming with certain things which the dentist have to deal with, right? But they were like forced to come into urgent care places or hospitals for those kind of things. So that was the motivation, honestly, behind that. Okay, I need to get back into the dentistry. So I knew that first of all, I need to pass my boards, right? So that was the first thing. And after I did my boards, part one and part two both. Right now, it's an integrated boards, but when I did, it was like part one and part two. So I passed both my boards. Then afterwards, it's TOEFL exam, which is compulsory and which is kind of the bigger hassle for many, many candidates out there. They really struggle hard for the TOEFL exam. But I was like probably being having the exposure to around the world and talking in this language, English. I was quite confident that I would be able to get a good score. And luckily, I did get 113 score out of 120 in my first attempt. And that was, I think, the TOEFL score along with the first attempt passes is a big thing for getting into any schools.
Yeah, that score. I know usually most programs want around 195 to 100, but
Plus,
yeah, 100 plus, but 113 out of 120, that's great. How did you study for that? Like, did you have a program that you study? What did you do?
I did the books from the library. There's called Barron's, and then there's ETS. There's a website where the ETS TOEFL exam people, they do like a, I don't know, it's a little program for a month where
Yes.
they teach you how to do every listening, speaking, on what kind of questions they are expecting from us, what they want us to respond in that way. So I tried to understand the paper pattern rather than practicing more. So like
Right.
once I
Right.
got the hang of it, like what the exam is all about, what they are expecting us to do in that exam, then it became easy. I did a lot of practice tests. But I didn't prepare for a very long time. It was just like 4 weeks. and honestly, very honestly, like 2 weeks to be very like, focused, really focused, but 4 weeks on the whole, like slowly getting started. I did see a lot of YouTube videos from TST prep people, the free content, they're amazing. And then I did practice tests from Test Glide. Now it's called Test Glider. At that time, it was called something else. So I did a lot of practice tests for speaking, listening, and I made a habit of sitting down for 3 hours. The major issue with TOEFL people have is like sitting down and then focusing on the listening part and speaking part. So I did practice on those things, and luckily I got the good score. And I was like, then I prepared my SOP, which is another challenge, statement of purpose, right? So then getting good letter of recommendations. But I've studied around the world, so I did have a, I think, plus point that I got a letter of recommendation from Dr. Mark Tennant, who was my mentor during my master's and my
Yeah.
research.
I was going to say that's for a lot of international trained dentists, that can be a challenge, right? Because depending on where you are in the world, meaning where you are when you're applying through CAAPID, you may have to contact professors
Definitely.
halfway across the country. And it's not like they can send it to you and then you turn it in. It has to go directly from
From them.
your institution across the world to the US schools that you're applying to. So for some people that can be a challenge, especially if you haven't talked to them in a in a long while.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the ability of you being able to just recently finish your program in Australia and still being in contact with those professors and those faculty members really helps. So guys, listen, that's a quick tip. You always want to stay in communication with faculty members because once you decide when you're going to apply, you need to be able to
Yeah.
contact them immediately, and they need to be able to remember who you are
You are.
so they can write you a letter of recommendation. So
Definitely.
very, very important. So you mentioned this, the statement of purpose and your letters of recommendation.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what now just to add to that, anything else? Bench test, was that required?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, so bench test, many of the schools do require a bench test, regardless of what kind of thing you are applying for or not. But there are certain schools who do not require it. Last year, due to COVID, some schools did go opt for another options, which did not want bench test as
Right,
such, but I
right.
still went in to prepare for myself because
Good.
I knew my lagging. Like if you are if you are practicing dentist, right, then you probably have good hand skills, but I have never, honestly, I didn't touch a handpiece for last so many years. So I kind of had to do the bench course. So I did go in, and I couldn't do like a long one, which is 6 or 7 days, which most people do, but I still went in to do a 2 day one. So whatever you can or not, just get into that so that you get a hang of it and you know what they are expecting. And being in coming from India and any other part of states, the protocols we use or how we work in those countries is very different than what they are expecting us from here. And also working on typhodonts, even if you work on patients, it is different. The teeth, the style of them, the cutting thing, it's very, very different how you feel it. So you definitely have to get accustomed. So I did my bench test preparation. I had a bench set up at home, everything. I did practice a lot of class 2 cavities, which is a standard thing to be asked. And then I practiced crown cuttings, class 2s, class 3s, class 1, right? So all those kind of thing and the proper positioning. I tried to use loops. It didn't really work with me. I didn't have a habit, and most of us, I believe, don't really are into a habit of working with loops. But I started slowly getting accustomed to them, and it really changed the game, honestly. So it really helped me. Even though NYU does not require a bench test to go forward, it's just an interview. But I did interview and do practicals and bench exam at the other schools where I was
Yeah,
interviewed. So
yeah.
that really helped me.
And I think that's important to note because just because a school is doesn't necessarily make it a requirement. In order for you to really increase your chances, you
Yeah.
want to make sure that most of the schools that you're applying to, that you take that bench test. So that's one thing that's checked off that will eventually help you and increase your candidacy and getting accepted, right? I know some people that, like for residency programs, they will only apply to programs that do not require like a GRE or the ADAT. And typically what happens is you now narrow down your pool of potential programs that you can get interviews from, and also which leads to being selected. So another quick tip, make sure that when you're looking at your programs or looking at programs that you want to apply to, if it says bench test, like Doc said, get ready for a bench test and prepare. And I think that's the other part that most people, in addition to the TOEFL preparation and maybe the course for that, taking a bench test prep course can be expensive, right? What was the cost for you to either do the course and or to prepare the materials for the course so that you could do it and practice at home?
So as I told you, because of my family situation, I had a young kid. I couldn't really go to Los Angeles for doing the other courses, or even to like their courses in Texas and stuff. I did a local course, which is in Bay Area, which is run by a professor from UCSF. It was a 2-day course, and I paid around less than, I think it was 1,700, if I'm not wrong, for 2 days. But when you like break down the cost, right, for 6 days or 2 days, it's almost similar for what you pay for 7 days. So like just calculate it more and add up more. So,
Gotcha.
but then I decided that I have to practice because I couldn't do a longer course. So I had a bench setup done at home, which I honestly bought from, there are many students on Facebook groups and who have got accepted, and even the people who are doing the rev exams, right? They sell out their stuff. So it's always best that if you can find a person who is selling out everything, get everything from that person,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think um that
That
is
helps with the cost also.
yeah, it helps with the core cost. It also helps with maybe the person that you're getting it from. Maybe
Yeah,
they took it last year and they can
yeah,
give you some tips, right?
definitely.
And there's a lot of networks for internationally trained dentists that are coming to the U.S.
Yeah.
and hopefully we'll continue to be one as well. And we'll put some of those resources down
Yeah, I'll
down
add a tip
in the
here, Dr.
description.
Darwin, that I'm sorry to interrupt, but I
No,
will
no,
add
it's
a
okay.
tip. Yeah, so while you're working as a dental assistant, try to make good communications with the dentist whom you work with, because they have providers like Henry Schein and other people, and they get discounts on that. So you can definitely, like I ordered my burrs and stuff like that. You can't order typhodons from them, but you can definitely order burrs and hat pieces if they're not working well. So I ordered those things from Henry Schein through my doctor, like who was mentoring me while I was working as a dental assistant. So she really helped me getting those stuff. So that's a good tip. Like if you're kind of finding to get a low price stuff. So, or even if you have friends in dental schools, they get student discounts.
Yeah,
So try to talk to people, like whosoever you know, try to talk to them.
yeah,
And just on the previous thing which you were saying, doctor, I wanted to add, I did ADAT exam, even though it was not required for me. I did it
yeah.
just to prove myself more competent
Yes.
and like, raise the bar, right? One
Going
more step.
above and beyond. And with the 2 years of what's the program at NYU? Is it 2 years?
It's 28 months now.
28 months. Okay, yeah, 28 months. Who knows? In 28 months, you may, it might be part of your plan to go into pedo, to go into ortho,
Yeah.
or one of the other programs, residency programs, where it is or possibly could be required to take the ADAT. So that ADAT score may still be, time wise, may still be relevant. So good
Yeah, and
strategy, good
honestly,
play.
yeah, because we are all preparing for boards. So because we already studied everything, it's very easy to do the ADAT right away. Like
Yep.
if you don't put a lot of gap, you're still fresh with your board stuff. So I didn't have to prepare a lot for that. I just did some files and stuff like that, right? And I was able to just sit in the exam and get a good score.
So when you get your scores, those scores have to go, as part of your application that you send
Yes.
out to schools. So let's talk about schools because, um, you were in California. You're actually now going to, you're in a program currently that's in New York. I mean, we're talking about East Coast, West Coast. And there's several. Actually,
Yeah.
there's more than several. There's about 28 different programs all throughout the country. So how did you even decide, what your strategy was going to be with regards to the programs that you're going to apply to? And tell us a little bit about why you put those down as far as the schools that you applied to.
So honestly, I'm not gonna lie here, but I was very, very desperate to get into my first cycle. So I applied to all and whatever, like whichever criteria I was fitting in, I applied to that. And luckily, I was fitting in most of the criteria for the school. I had a good GPA, I had a good TOEFL, I had first attempts, I did ADAT. So I was fitting in almost all the criteria for most of the schools. So I ended up applying more than 15 schools, which I really don't advise to do that if you're not that desperate, but it helps because you will land up somewhere nice. And NYU was always NYU and UCSF. They have been my dream schools forever.
Yeah.
There are two reasons, because at NYU, many of my seniors, while I was studying back home in India, they graduated here in 2013, 14, and 16. In those years, they graduated here. I saw them. And I love violet. I just love that color. I was telling you. So I don't know, it's kind of odd or what. I just like that violet thing. And I'm so fascinated by NYU. And then UCSF, another school where a lot of my seniors and even my juniors at my home school, they have graduated from there. And I did interview at UCSF, but unfortunately I was not invited right away. So I had to choose that I have to move for New York or I have to wait for their response. But I decided to move to New York.
Yeah. And I think that strategy that you shared with regards to the schools and why is a common strategy, right? And it's because not necessarily desperate. What's the real, another good word? You were just extremely strategic.
Yeah.
and making sure that you had every opportunity to go to a program.
But you definitely have to see that you're not applying to school who wants a GPA of 3.5 and you are applying with a 3.2. There's no fun in that.
Yeah,
right?
It's no fun in that. You're wasting your time, right?
Yeah. So don't do that. Like, luckily for me, I had a very good GPA of 3.83. And with my master's, I had a 4 out of 4 GPA. So I was like checking off all those things. So I did not have to think of which school to apply. But there are schools who have minimum TOEFL requirements. You cannot apply below 95 or below 100.
Yes,
right.
So
those kind of things, you have to think of that. And then visa status, definitely. Like being international, you have to see there are certain schools which want green card holders and citizens for sure. There are some schools who are okay with any kind of visas. And there are some schools who can even accept visitor visas. Like even if you have never came to US, or you just have a B1, B2 visa status.
Right.
So they still accept you and they provide you with the student visa. So you definitely have to work really closely with the schools because this thing changes every year.
It does. It does. It definitely changes as the dynamics of the candidates change, but also the requirements of the school.
And the current thing with the COVID, it has been changing a lot.
COVID has changed it. The CODA accreditation, there's new standards that come out that are for U.S. Students and for the internationally trained students that'll be in the advanced standing program as well. So all those changes, you have to be up on those. So how many interviews were you able to obtain?
I did 6 interviews.
Great. And
from UCSF, Minnesota, Loma Linda, Pittsburgh, NYU. Yeah. And I'm thinking of which one was that. Yeah. So yeah, for now I remember this.
Yeah, that's great. Anything that you remember specifically about the interview day, as in questions that were not typical? Maybe you heard this question once at one interview and that was it. You didn't hear it at any other interviews. For the most part, all the interviews are going to be somewhat similar. But what do you remember that was unique about the questions or about the interview day?
It was not NYU, but there was one unique question which I was asked at some other school. So they asked me, like, let's say if you want to have a dinner date with somebody, it can be anyone, it can be from your family, your friends, it can be a renowned personality. Whom would that be and why? I was asked that question, and which was kind of like odd. I didn't even hear of that question before. So, and it was a group of 8 people to answer. It was like a combined session, like a breakout room. Because I did all the interviews mostly on Zoom. None of my interviews have been in person. So we were in breakout rooms, so we had to answer that. So that was an interesting one. And I responded Kamala Harris. I wanted because I am really fascinated by her journey. First of all, she is Indian. Second, she is female. Third, she represents the minor communities. And then she has paved her path from an immigrant child, just like me. I'm an immigrant, but she was an immigrant child. So I definitely look forward upon her.
Yeah.
So I talked about her, and even the interview was like, wow, how did you ended up choosing Kamala Harris? Like, but I recently heard her because she got selected. She was the vice president, right? And I was listening to her speech, and I still remember those words in my ears that next time any girl child sees her, they want to be motivated enough that they can do anything what they want.
That's right. That's right. And she's from California. Well,
Yes,
I mean, not necessarily from California, but she has been
she had
representing
worked. Yeah, she was
the
a
state of
senator at Los
that's right.
Angeles. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So she definitely checked all the boxes for the reasons that you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your selections, not necessarily your selections, your acceptances, right? How you selected or went about selecting your acceptances. I know, you mentioned two of the schools that you had interviews at were like your top schools, right? NYU and UCSF, that's in San Francisco. How did you decide as to those acceptances, and how many acceptances did you end up getting?
So I got like 2 acceptances, but the thing was that UCSF was still on hold. But then I had to choose which one. And NYU, always I have been like so fascinated about New York City, my seniors. So they were like not even like in question. If NYU accepts me, there was no other question. I was like, okay, I'm going.
I'm going. Right, done deal. NY what? New York?
Yeah.
Hey, if I have to walk, I'm gone. Let's go.
Yeah, either it was UCSF because I lived there. That was the another thing because it was like
Yeah.
30 minutes away from my home. But the second thing, which was like, and I'm lucky I got in, it was NYU for sure. It was always that. It wasn't even like a second thought.
Yeah, yeah. And but one of the things I wanted to share, it's not necessarily but as part of those acceptances, you have to look at the cost, the investment.
Yeah.
New York is New York. California, San Francisco is also like New York. It's like the New York of the West, right? What are the costs? Because a lot of people have questions about the cost.
Yeah.
What's the cost at UCSF and also for NYU for the advanced standing program?
Okay, so I would like to add one more thing in the interview question, which they ask at NYU interviews, because it is a big thing. You cannot live in New York. You cannot really support yourself there. So they want to know how are you planning to pay off for the program fees and the
Right,
living cost.
right.
Apart from the program fees, the living cost. That is another big chunk which you have to think about. So for me, I had been living in San Francisco, which you said is a New York of the West, technically. So I was already living in a costly place, but New York is still costlier. Trust me, it
Yes,
is even more costlier.
yes, yes. I know.
Yeah.
Facts, facts, as we say, facts.
Yes. So
So
living in Manhattan is a dream, but it is you have to think about that dream multiple times. But
right.
I'm so you have to answer those questions really strategically that okay, you have a support for your family because being a mother, they really asked me like, what are you planning to do with your kid? Right? Who's going to take care of your daughter? Because she's still very young. She turned 4 last month, right? So they literally asked me those questions. So what are your plans on that? So I did have answers for that because I had support from my family, my husband, and my mother came over from India to help me
Oh,
with my child.
nice,
Yeah.
nice.
So you have to tell them that you have family support, or at least you are planning to put them into daycare or something like that for kids. And for the funds, you do have other kind of support to from back home. Even if you're not living in US, you can say that you have funds from back home, like countries like India, so they can support your studies. You can get loans That's a big thing, right? So you
Yeah.
do have funding in that manner. But yeah, don't say that you can work because you technically can't work. You won't have time for that.
No
Uh,
time. No
yeah,
time.
no time for that.
You'll
So
be working, all right. You'll be working on studying.
yeah.
That's your job.
So
Studying,
yeah,
preparing, being in the lab, and everything else. So
and the
what's
reason
tuition like at NYU for the advanced standing program?
so tuition, honestly, I didn't calculate the whole amount, but it goes above 2.2 K to 2.5. It's in between that, plus the living cost, which is quite high. So where I live right now, I have a rent of 3,500 because I live next to NYU,
Yeah.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's about, yeah. So you have to think, but there are people in my class who have been living in New Jersey, so they commute. So you have to think on all those terms, what works best for you. But anywhere the rent in New York for per month can go from 2,000 up to 3,500 and even higher.
Yeah.
And your living cost is that, but you get loans for that. You can get loans, private loans, FAFSA loans, if you are a green card holder or citizen, but otherwise private loans with a co-signer. So for co-signer, you have to work hard. That's another problem for many, many people. So, but definitely do talk to people, try to maintain good contacts with your friends, your family friends, even if you haven't talked to them in years. Try to get in touch with them and tell them that it helps them build a good credit score ultimately. It's a
Yeah.
good thing on their credit also. So you need a co-signer for sure. You have to think about that. If you're applying for CAAPID, try to think who can be your potential people.
And that cosigner, if I'm not mistaken, has to be.
A green card or a citizen.
There you go.
Yes, it
You
has
guys,
to be.
you
It
guys
cannot
heard,
be
you
H1.
guys
It
heard
can,
that? You have to
yeah,
be your co-signer either has to be a U.S. citizen
or
or
a
a
green
green
card.
card holder.
It cannot be H1 visa. It cannot be F1 visa. It
Right.
cannot be any visa. It has to be that citizen or green card holder specifically. So that's it. There are some private loans which do this things like Prodigy. They do loans without cosigner, or you have an option of getting loans from your home country, but they can be different kind of rates of interest which come into play. So you have to think on those costs. But that's after you get accepted. Before
Yeah.
getting accepted, there's a long journey before getting accepted.
Yeah. And that's true. And that's true. And to your point, as part of your application, as part of your interview preparation, you need to be prepared to talk about how are you going to pay for this investment? How are you
Yeah.
going to pay for tuition? And also how you're going to pay for your living expenses and who do you have set up to help you? So it is important to know and have that idea and to know some of the tips that we share with regards to who uh, who can co-sign for you and then how do you get some of those other funds because I'm telling you I've talked to people from I'm looking at my board here Brazil, Hungary, Kuwait, Iran, Lebanon, Honduras. Talk from people from London, Turkey, Venezuela, from the Philippines, Nepal, Albania, Saudi Arabia, and where you used to live, Australia. I've talked to them in these last 4 to 5 years, and that's always a question that comes up. How do I get what are the resources for internationally trained dentists to come to the US and train now in the US? It costs money. How do we get access to that money? So I'm glad you brought that up. So the thing I want you to bring up now, this is probably the part that everybody's been waiting for. It's really the the essence of our episode today, which is tips, advice, knowing what you know now and the process that you've gone through and have successfully completed one time, right? One cycle, you're one for one and done. What are some tips and advice that you would give people who are possibly your colleagues in India, your colleagues in Australia, and just your colleagues across the world that are looking and have a desire to come to the U.S. and train as a dentist?
So my first, there are two words which I always say: patience and resilience. So do not think of anything you are doing that why, do not question that why you are doing it. Like you may be starting as a dental assistant, but think of it as an opportunity to learn new. Do not think of it as a degraded thing because you were a dentist at your home country, now you're working as a dental assistant. because you are learning something new. Always go into any place for learning, that you think, okay, what will be the new thing which I'll learn today? So with that kind of attitude, you will always have a successful day in your life. Then do not leave any stone unturned, any volunteer opportunity, any bench course, any work. Try to get it. Like, even though you think you're already okay. So if you know, like, I applied for my cycle bit not late, but on time in April. But I literally started doing my dental assisting jobs in February. But I still continued with a very positive attitude that I will get in. This will give me the fruit one day. I was working 7 days a week. I was doing 2 jobs as a dental assistant, one in a private setup, one in a corporate setting. I was doing volunteering. I was working as a research associate at UCSF. That, like, I did everything. So whatever you get, try to talk to people. The only mistake which I did was, I think, I did not talk to people soon enough. That's why I had to wait for 2 years to think of it, to get started. But people are very helpful. Your seniors, the other colleagues, the people who have been through this journey, reach out to them, ask them their journey, ask them the tips. They may have some resources or connections which can really help you. Many of my connections helped me to get some jobs or research opportunities. So try to get hold of those. And any of the LORs which you're seeking, like, let's say you're getting into a dental assisting job, do not go the very first day and say, okay, hi, doctor, I want to get an LOR from you because I'm applying into CAAPID. That's when I start as a shadowing person or a dental assisting. Don't do that. That's the biggest blunder you do. So try to get into as a work. They obviously know, they are not, like, they are smart enough to know that you are a potential candidate for applying into CAAPID, and you will eventually need an LOR. Build a connection, build a relationship with your doctors, with your like colleagues over there and staff. Show them your caliber, and they will happily give you, like, whatever you want, like an LOR or any other kind of support. They will happily give you that. And then, yeah, TOEFL and the other stuff, I would say ADAT. Those are certain things. If you have anything lagging in your application, for me, it was clinical experience. I did not have much opportunity to work as a dentist after passing out from my school because I moved to Australia real soon. So that's why I tried to do a lot of hands-on work and get into CE courses, try to do online CE courses. There is, like, if you can't shadow the dentist in person, do virtual shadowing. There are many options to do that. So try to do those kind of things, online CE courses. And definitely for your supplemental questions, for New York or any other school who has a supplemental question here, think of it as your pathway to the school directly. Really work hard on those questions and try to resonate them with the school, like how you are the perfect match, or, like, you can say, the match made in heaven for them. So you have to show them that, okay, you are the only person who is best for them, who has all her thoughts and everything aligned with them. So for my NYU supplementals, my teacher, like, honestly, when I did the interview completed, she was, like, really happy with that, because she was like, okay, I can't even imagine of anybody else who can take your place, because I know you will be succeeding really well, and I really want you to be in there. And with your interviewer, connect with them.
Gotta connect. Well, you just connected with everyone who's watching and listening, because you just gave 6 great pieces of advice and tips that will help you have continued success and get selected into an advanced standing program here in the US. And Doc, thanks so much for sharing that information. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they wanted to ask you some more questions?
So I do have an Instagram page, which I recently started to help out other candidates. So I just post my story as what I'm doing in dental school right now. It's called The Dental Dream. And I also help out answer questions. Like, whatever, you feel free to send me a DM or text me on Instagram. I am quite active on that page because that's my pastime. I put posts and so that it interests you. And I'm ready to answer any kind of CAAPID question, SOP questions. I've been reviewing out things for students or many of my colleagues recently to just help out. And so that because it feels dreadful, like, or even if you want to just talk, because it is very overwhelming. I know my nights when I cried a lot. I was, like, so overwhelmed. I didn't have, like, time to take care of my daughter and stuff. But yeah, just be optimistic. That's one thing. And make sure that every effort you are doing, it will, so like, you'll get the fruit out of it. Don't see of it as like, why I'm stuck in this place. You're not stuck. You're working every single time to get into that dream which you have lived throughout.
Yeah, Doc. And I think we need to collaborate, because I'm working on a program for colleagues like yourself, and love for you to teach some of those modules, because you've had some great experiences and some great success in this journey. So thank you so much. It's been very helpful talking to you. Guys, hopefully these videos here are helpful as well. Check those out. And that's our time. Love, peace, and smiles. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Darwin.